What is the ego, basically? To put it very simply, it's just like a mask. A false mask that we've created. We created this identity slowly over time, right? If you've created it, one day it must also be destroyed. And if you can create it in the first place, there must have been something else before you created it, right? And some people who experience amnesia, they fall over, they hit their head, they have some trauma in the body, and the memories seem to be completely gone, as if the old personality has evaporated, right? But their being still exists. So can you really say you are this personality, that you are this limited ego that you've created? Ego is just a fiction. And depending, of course, on the kind of society which you are living, you'll have a different kind of ego. You'll have a different kind of mind. You'll have different likes and dislikes. You might think, oh, I would never do something so barbaric like, in some African tribes. Some African tribes, they're still living like they were 2,000 years ago. Some of them are living like cannibals. Maybe you'll think, oh, I could never live like that. But we just have to work on you. We just have to work on you. If you were born at that time in that kind of society, with that kind of programming, with that kind of conditioning, with that kind of upbringing, you will do whatever is socially acceptable, which is what we are all doing today, right? Just whatever is socially acceptable. You might think, I would never kill somebody, okay? With all due respect, but the number one thing today which is preventing murder is not really people's humanity. It's not really their inner sense of morality, just the fact that it's illegal. Just imagine one day, 24 hours, we abolish the law against murder. Oh my God. It would be a mess. In 24 hours' time, the whole society will be upside down. Because people are just living by what's conventional. Part of a spiritual process means, first, what does it mean? You're taking absolute responsibility for your own well-being. People are afraid to take responsibility for their own well-being because then they have to face the fact that their misery and their joy, their suffering and their freedom, it's all their own creation. You can no longer point the finger and say, I'm like this because my boss is a jerk, I have rotten parents, I didn't have the proper education, oh, have you met the kind of people I have to deal with, what a headache they're giving me. You can no longer create all these different excuses. It's all completely your own creation. Of course, there are certain things we can't control. There are things we can't control. What's happening in the outside world, how much can we control? We have no control over the circumstances in the society. We have no control, personal control, over the economy, over politics, over what's happening in millions of other people's minds on the planet. All that we don't have control over. One thing you do have that is in your hands is your response. Your response to the moment. Outside world is giving you information. From this information, your mind will react. But then there's that third step. How do you respond to your reactions? And that's what makes all the difference. If you have a conscious response to life, life can become 100% an expression of freedom. If you have a conscious approach to life. If you have an unconscious response, then of course you're like a mechanism, automatic. Like, what is a machine? With all due respect, but what's a machine? A machine just works automatically. Whatever it's its programming, it just does that. We also have a programming. We also have conditioning. But you can rise beyond that if only you start to have a more conscious approach. Like, I've heard this argument that humanity can never be at peace. Why? Because we've been living through centuries of violence and aggression, and that's part of how other animals are living, right? Fighting for survival. Why is it that there's so many wars on the planet? I would say a big part of it is coming from our old, ancient animal instincts to be possessive, territorial, right? Other animals are also territorial. If we have evolved from that, still we have this old baggage from the past. That is instinct. So human beings are also territorial for the same reason. However, one distinct thing that makes human life unique from many of the other forms of life is you can start to have a more conscious approach, right? So if you have a more conscious approach, then your own inner well-being is entirely yours. So I don't know what level of well-being you're interested in exploring into, but my understanding is that this is part of the natural growth of every human being. Once one level of well-being has been fulfilled, you automatically want to look at the next level, and the next, and the next. Just like a lotus. One of the images in yoga do you know this? One of the images in yoga which is symbolic in the tradition, is a lotus. And they call it the highest chakra, the highest energy center, which is at the top of the skull. They called it the 1,000-petaled lotus. Because it's just like that. Layers upon layers. Once your energies reach this level, then layers and layers of well-being start unfolding. And what limit does it have? As long as you're living in the body, growth can become a continuous process. So if it's only physical well-being that you're interested in, I have no problem with that. I don't mind just teaching physical yoga. But I know very well that once there's physical health in the body, you cannot be only contented with that. You'll naturally want to seek something else. So isn't that the energy of evolution? Look at the history of evolution. What's this creative energy that's evolving on the planet? Once the energy reaches one level of growth, it's automatically seeking the next. So in other words, if your intelligence is allowed to move steadily, with steady growth, without backsliding into the same repetitive patterns, what I am saying is every human being will naturally lead himself towards his ultimate freedom. There's no other way. The only thing preventing that is falling back into the same patterns, the same cycles of suffering, carrying the same blind spots that you're not able to identify. That's karma. That is your karma. So understanding this karma, one aspect of it means is seeing the memories that are influencing you from past experience. How are you reacting to this present moment? It has much to do with what has been your past experience. So if somebody has had enough experiences of stress and fear in his life, it'll come to be that this is how he will respond to the moment. Something happens, it'll just become automatic. He has to be stressful. He has to be anxious. So you can also rewire the programming. How? Inducing a different quality of experience. Just like what we were saying in the beginning of the conversation, this is one of the beauties of this mind. This mind does not forget. If you have a glimpse into silence, a glimpse into greater quietness and calmness of the mind, this mind does not forget it. And if you have enough of these sort of experiences, what happens is the physical body and the mind restructures, reorganizes itself according to those sort of experiences. So you take it for granted. I'm amazed today when you say, oh, I had a really horrible day. Nobody's surprised. They don't say, "Oh, you had a horrible day, really? Wow, I've not heard that for a while." If you say, "I had a great day," then everybody's surprised. "What? You had a great day? Tell me all about it." Right? It should be the opposite. So we just have socially accepted kinds of sickness. Today people take it for granted that this is a normal way of life, to live stressful, fear, anxiety. If that can become very natural for you, to be always living in a state of fear, why isn't the opposite possible? 24 hours, you can live in a state of freedom and well-being. So, yes, that's possible. But we have to work towards it. People are not willing to work towards it. They are just trying to address their well-being randomly. Random happiness. Something will happen randomly, you're expecting that you'll become happy. Life does not work like that. Yes, of course, sometimes certain things will happen that will bring some happiness and joy to you. But haven't you found they've always been short-lived? They don't last. Something else happens, it comes crashing down. That means that your well-being is not entirely in your hands, the way that you've been approaching your life. So we've taken some time in our life, right, to take care of external things, our job, our family, our friends, some enjoyment and pleasures that we've invested that amount of energy into the outside world. Exactly in the same way, we need to invest our energy towards our inner well-being as a discipline. I mean as a discipline. Why as a discipline? Because that's the only thing that's really available to us right now. Luck is not in our hands. Randomness is not in our hands. What's happening in so many other people's minds on the planet, that's not in our hands. What is the past influence on your mind from your past experience? That's already done. That's not in your hands. What's coming tomorrow in the future? That's also not in your hands. Only thing that's really available in your hands is a discipline to understand yourself as you are. So you don't try to change yourself. I'm not talking self-improvement. Do you understand? Do you get my point? I'm not talking self-improvement. What is the idea of self-improvement? I'm like this, I want to be like this, right? But you're avoiding seeing how you are, the reality of how you want to escape from that. That's the whole trap. You want to escape from seeing yourself as you are and replacing it with a better version. That will not bring enduring well-being. Because only insight to what is, to the facts of our being, the facts of our life, only that brings, from that insight, now you have wisdom. And from that wisdom comes freedom. But wisdom does not happen because you have imaginations about reality. That's the problem. We are too much lost in our imagination. We are not in tune with reality. So to be in tune with reality, again, just tying it back to what we were earlier talking about, because if there's anything I want you to take away today from this conversation, it's just this. With greater quietness and calmness of the mind, then you have a prepared slate for insight.